Open University.
Greetings, my vlogonauts. I'm still in Berlin and the weather is still shitty. It's raining today, it's a Sunday, so it's not quite as desolate as last weekend, which was the bank holiday, the Easter weekend. But basically the whole weather forecast for this entire month I'm here is for clouds. I think yesterday I went to Potsdam and there was a little sun when I arrived there, which was miraculous. But some young friends, a guy called Leo, who's 19, invited me there. He's a musician. He was working on soundscapes in Ableton, but kindly interrupted that in order to basically show me Potsdam, which is a city I haven't been to, a town adjoining Berlin to the south, which I haven't been to since I think about 2007. I went to a kind of architecture event which was organized by Jesko, who's the manager of Pro Quadratmeter bookshop in Berlin. So Leo took me to some cafes and of course the famous Rechenzentrum, which is an old communist era building with fantastic murals in front of it of cosmonauts and workers and mathematicians and all, beautiful communist era building, which is unfortunately under threat at the moment of demolition from some people anyway, not the government, but there are vociferous opponents of it and people who want to restore a kind of 18th century, 19th century ambience to the town. It already feels like stepping back into the past. I mean, Europe in general feels like that anyway if you live in Asia, because you're so used to being surrounded by contemporary buildings, and suddenly Europe is the 19th century. But Potsdam particularly feels like that. But it also has a radical spirit, and so we went to a bookstore called Sputnik, which has a basement area full of free books and free clothes. So this sweater is totally free, the shirt I'm wearing under it, totally free. Just take what you need. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need. And I got some nice books there. Again in German, but books by people like Karl Kapek, a book called Stories from One Pocket or the Other Pocket. No, One Bag or the Other Bag, Tasche. And so we ended up a group of about 6 people, all I guess in their early 20s, and had a sort of riotous time hearing their stories about stealing. Shouldn't say what they about borrowing. But no, that's not something they did. Yeah, and then in the evening I went to this event. I met a fellow called Bendrik, who is very kindly, who's got a studio in Berlin equipped with a DAT recorder, a DAT player, which is exactly what I need because I'm trying to get extra tracks for my creation box set, which is forthcoming from Cherry Red. So Bendrik is the man I need to go through all my old DAT tapes, which I've hauled out of my storage unit, and to get them into digital or onto computers, basically, to compile that. And he also very kindly organized a guest list place for a Bowie impersonator last night, who is called Sven Ratzkel, who is performing in a tent right next to the Haus der Kultur in der Welt. And the Haus der Kultur in der Welt is like a homeland for me, and it was I was hanging out there before. I'm going to be doing some work there in May on their steering committee. But it was quite a contrast because I went from this event, which was mostly, I think it's called 2 or 3 Tigers. It's a East Asian art exhibition which has just opened there. I didn't see the exhibition, I'll say that later, but lots of Japanese people were there and I could feel very at home. And then suddenly I went to this tent next door to see the Bowie show. and it's full of, it's really the kind of cabaret performance that people from, not even Berliners, but people from outside Berlin who come to visit Berlin go to. And it can happen on a boat, or it can happen in a tent. And there's always lots of beer being served during, at the tables. It's a seated cabaret type performance. So a little bit like in cabaret, where you see the kind of the club that the characters are working in, and then gradually Nazis start to appear in the audience, and you can see history changing. But this is one thing about Berlin that never changes: is this appetite for kind of comedy cabaret, sometimes with a satirical edge and other times not. I don't know if Sven Retzkel was intending to have a satirical edge to doing Bowie, but he was mixing comedy spiel in German in between the songs with these very serious or kind of razzle-dazzle, glitzy kind of takes on Bowie's catalogue. So it was absolutely, I felt like a spy in the cab. I was another Bowie impersonator there to glean what I could from his act. His act was really odd. I mean, I made the mistake of sitting right at the front because I thought I'd be pestered less by the alcohol waiters who are circulating the whole time trying to make you drink if I went there. And what I didn't realize was that it was total audience involvement, audience participation. So Sven, he appeared on stage in this sort of very tight lycra outfit with big stack-heeled boots and kind of ridiculous frilly ruff that went up way beyond his head, and kind of space age glam rock meets Elizabethan kind of outfit. But you could see from the proximity I was, you could see it was really badly put together with nylon and stuff, and so he took it off in a kind of stripteasy manner, and he launched into this. First of all, it was one of his songs about stardust and stuff like that, and then this long monologue of just where he's dialoguing with the people, actually a dialogue, not a monologue, the people sitting next to me who were from Potsdam. I'd also just come up from Potsdam on the train. It was kind of funny, but he basically was drinking their drinks and then ordering them lots of new drinks to replace what he'd drunk, and just making fun of Potsdam and making fun of just badinage with the audience. And I was just sitting there trying not to make eye contact with him, thinking he'd just better not speak to me or make some reference to my eye patch or whatever. I felt so out of place there, really. And I started calculating how can I escape? I have to do it when he's got his back turned, or because he's going to, if I just walk out, he's going to make some joke of that as well. It was a tent. I don't know how many people were there, maybe 200 people, 300 people in the tent. So I managed to make my escape in the third number, which was Lady Grinning Soul, which was really interesting for me to actually stay and watch, because I do that number as well. The first Bowie track he did was Rebel, Rebel, and it was really strange that he did it with, there was no guitar in his band, there was a synth player who had distortion patch on his synth, so he was playing the riff from Rebel, Rebel. Rebel, Rebel is a riff song, you can't do it without a guitar, really, but somehow they did, and the arrangements are actually quite interesting. They're not bad at all, but they're not vulgar, straight-ahead rock arrangements. It's quite interesting how they transcribe them away from that. But I really couldn't persist beyond three numbers, and crept out when he was at the most heartfelt and kind of sensitive moments of Lady Grinning Soul. You can see clips on YouTube if you want to check out his act. I mean, he's very campy, and he's very good at improvising these kind of interactions with the audience, with that particular type of audience. But I just felt it was just a horrific mismatch, really. I guess I'm grateful to Bendrick for getting me on the guest list, but very much just confirmed that I'm not that kind. And I thought Bowie himself would also have walked out. I mean, to be honest, I really felt that it was just a cheap shtick. And Bowie is a spiritual presence. His writing, his material has a spiritual power and also a sexual power that is just ruined if you camp it up in that way and turn it into a kind of cabaret spectacle. It makes me aware of the layers of culture that do exist in Berlin. There's a kind of local Berlin culture or provincial Berlin culture, which is still kind of all about drinking your Berliner Kindl beer and singing hearty songs on the river tour, or it's about taking it easy and slow on the weekends, and going to somewhere green and leafy, going to the lakes and drinking beer there. Just a certain middle-aged, staid and deeply conservative culture, which is, I guess, a German culture. And you see it if you go crate digging in the second-hand stores here in Neukölln. Also, you see endless Roger Whittaker records and James Last records. It's that kind of culture. What was interesting about going to Potsdam was that I was doing crate digging there, but I was doing it in second-hand shops which had a lot of communist-era material. So, of course, even if there was... This is the thing, that even within communism there was also this middle-brow, middle-aged culture, which was on the Amiga label in the case of East Germany. So you get parallel kind of mediocrity in communist framing, which is actually not that different. It really makes you think about how... something I think about with France and Britain, for instance, is that, okay, France had this revolution, they had the terror, they executed all these people from the Ancien Régime, but in the end, is France, a technocratic modern state? Is it really so different from Britain because it has this constitution and because it has this revolution, these republics which have succeeded the revolution? It's really all about how people live and what their taste is and whether they believe in mediocrity or originality, all these things. So Berlin luckily has these other layers, which are cosmopolitan layers. It has the Turkish layer, and sometimes, I love that. I sit eating olives and dates and things, and Turkish yogurt and stuff, and enjoying the presence of that culture. But sometimes I walk up the Hermannstrasse thinking, this is not Istanbul. Why are these guys parking on the pavement? People nose their Mercedes and their BMWs, which are often glitzy and expensive cars, kind of status symbols, trophy cars. They nose them onto the sidewalk and they block the path of prams and people. Fertility and prams is another theme of the week, because I went to visit my friends Josto and Naoko, who have just had twin babies, rather to their surprise. I mean, they had ultra scans, and so they knew from a certain point they were going to have twins, but from having no children, being very much a childless couple like many of my friends from the Berlin era. I have to say that the friends I had in Berlin when I lived here were mostly UDK students. They were at the art college, the University der Kunst, and they were often connected to this course called Art in Context. So there was a whole bunch of people who are now, who were either dispersed, like Sunshine, a Chinese girl who was on that course, now lives in Sheffield, is married, Jan is working in design. I think vaguely connected to Deutsche Telekom. I'm not sure. And I'm supposed to go and see his office, which has got a cafe in it in Kreuzberg, quite soon. And Josto just got a job doing web design. I guess as a father now of twins, he has to bring home the bacon. So it goes back to my concerns about the pram and the hall. How can you sustain a creative life and have children? Naoko was saying, well, obviously she's not been making much jewellery since having the babies. It was incredible. The babies are very tiny. They were born slightly prematurely, so they can't go outside. They're kept in a temperature-controlled room, and there are these amazingly detailed charts of exactly when each feeding time happens, and each nappy change and the temperature in the room. It's very German. You get assigned a government-paid nanny, basically, when you have babies here. They also subsidize you to a fair extent. It's very German, the whole thing. It's very official. Josto was drowning in paperwork. He had to do paperwork not just for the German state, but also for the Japanese state. So he's running up and down to the Japanese embassy. You're suddenly a very official person. Just as Brecht said, actually, Brecht said it's more difficult to make a passport than a human being. We all know how to make a human being. It's a nice, reassuring piece of intuitive biology, intuitive liquid mechanics, if you like. But to make a passport, especially during war, when he was talking about it, is terribly difficult. So I've felt slightly left out of the demographic, the baby boom kind of thing. The Turkish population here is obviously a very demographically prolific one, and that's what Germany needs, because Germany has a static or even negative population growth. My friends also booming in that sense, baby booming. But I'm always slightly in flight from these, from either districts which have become baby boom districts. Prenzlauer Berg was the first. When I moved to Berlin, people all said, "Oh yeah, you don't want to go to Prenzlauer Berg because it's nothing but babies and carriages and tricycles and these children's clothes shops, which are one of the first indicators of the turn of an area from a youthful, culturally productive area to a demographically productive area." That's the first sign that people like me, sterile kind of culture-oriented people, have to get the hell out of Dodge and go to some other area. But of course I welcome new humans, and the babies were tremendously cute. And yeah, new humans for the win. Just not that many, because we have like 7 billion, we don't need really that many. We could probably coast for a century at least, without making any new children. Would that work? No, that probably wouldn't. If it was a century, we'd all die out, wouldn't we? It was sort of amazing looking at these babies, thinking that they'll be alive in the 22nd century, and wondering what that'll be like. And I suppose it does make you politically more forward-looking, although, of course, there are terrifying things in that future, climate change being one of them. I think this terrible weather we're having just now is one of the results of climate change. I keep hearing different sort of semi-scientific explanations for why the springs are so shitty in, especially April. It's very changeable, very stormy, very cloudy, very wet. And there was actually, when I went to my storage to get the DAT tapes the other day, there was actually quite heavy snow falling and also sleet. And so one hears that it's because climate change has changed the position of the jet stream, and the jet stream in the Arctic is bringing cold air down, or some kind of complex explanation for it. But I also hear that the time that I lived in Berlin was exceptional, because there was fantastic weather in the mid-noughties. I was telling this to the boys in Potsdam yesterday, and they were laughing at me using the term noughties. They'd never heard this expression, the noughties. But apparently it was very unusual. 2003, 2004, these were what I thought Berlin's weather was like, and the spring was just beautiful, clear, sunny every day. This was apparently the exception, and actually this kind of shitty April that we're having now is more like the Berlin norm. So this is what one hears anyway. And I've just chosen, obviously, a bad month to be in Berlin. I'm kind of looking forward to escaping to Italy. I brought all these summer clothes, expecting to be slipping into them pretty much immediately I arrived in Europe, but it's actually half the temperature that we have in Osaka just now. In Osaka it's over 20 pretty much every day, the high. Here it's still about 10. It was freezing. The wind yesterday in Potsdam was freezing. I didn't take a jacket, and so I had to get this free sweater just to kind of exist in Potsdam. So yeah, after I've done my work for Haus der Kultur in der Welt, I'm off to Italy, and I'm going to enjoy just wearing my flip-flops and my shorts and sort of acting as if it's summer, even if it's not. Even if for some reason it's really stormy and horrible in Italy as well, which I'm sure it won't be. And there'll be the Venice Biennale, and yeah, all that's to look forward to. But yeah, so I'm here for at least another 2 weeks, I think it is, possibly 2.5 weeks, something like that. And I will no doubt keep you updated.